I can't believe I went the whole summer and that didn't even occur to me. Just get a bigger pot. You never know.
Yeah, well, it's sort of one of those things, the reason I fool around with these plasma lights down in Oregon, there's a guy down there who's testing them out, and I love them. I think they're the next thing. I'm waiting for a homegrown. I want one that's that big that you can use in a tent because they're unbelievable efficiency. But the root systems are twice the size, and so this guy kept insisting that he was going to dig it up, and no, he was pulling off the leaves. That's what he was doing, and I kept saying, "What are you doing?" That's sort of I don't know if you're filming this or not, but that's sort of the tendency is a lot of people pick off the leaves, and they pick off the leaves ostensibly, I think, to make the bottom nodes maybe to get a little bit more light. I'm not quite sure why they do it, but I think that's what it must be, because I just tuck them under. But I kept saying, Jesus, you don't understand how big your root ball is. And so we dug it up, and holy crap, what am I doing? You're right. I mean, and you pull those leaves off, and the root system's going, wait a minute, what's the matter? You screw the plants up.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be in balance and work together. And you got to be very careful how you pinch back and train plants. I think it's really...
So where we live here in the Northwest, one of our biggest issues is mold, right? And so a lot of folks here will pinch leaves, like you said, for the light to get in, but also so the air can get in, so that there's constant fresh air in the middle.
Right.
Is that worth the trade-off to pinch leaves?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think if there's a way you can train the plant by pulling it apart a little bit, the least disturbance you can do to the physical part of the plant is the best.
Are the leaves really banking nutrients for future use?
Well, I think I think so. They're certainly, those nutrients get used up. The reason why you see those bottom leaves turn yellow is because those nutrients are being used. And so you can pull those yellow ones off.
Sure.
I think people just get a little carried away with it. But,
right on.
it's tempting to play with our plants.
Yeah.
It's fun.
This will make a good addendum to our series.
Yes.
All right. So the next question here.
We've bred these cannabis plants again using the hydroponic model. Pumping food into them. Do we really need to do that to all plants? But now that we're in the soil model, have we taken the hydroponic model into the soil world, or have we sort of altered it a little bit so that now we're using the giant pumpkin model, where you put as much food in the soil as you possibly can? That may not grow the best cannabis. And ultimately, I think that's what we got to get back to. We got to start thinking about what kind of cannabis we're growing. Big is not necessarily the best. Big is not necessarily better. We're looking for good quality and the specific kind of quality that we as an individual might want. You might want medical, you might want recreational. So I forgot how we got on that one.
Let's take this one more step. So if on one end it is powerfully interesting to grow an autoflower in plain bagged potting soil and not give it a bunch of food. So that's just interesting to watch. I did that last year. Last year's my first year growing autos, and I did a bunch of different stuff. And the damn thing is they all grew. So it's amazing.
Yeah. You use the same seeds the whole time?
I did it with 3 different types of seeds. And they were all autoflowers, all feminized, and they all grew, and it was like bulletproof, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that you can pop seeds April 1st and harvest July 1, pop a second round of seeds July 1st, and be done October 1. That's 2 cycles with no light depth, and here in the Northwest, that's like gold, right?
From Anchorage, Alaska, that is platinum.
Yeah, right. There you go. So my question though is that let's say now this season and for folks who are a couple years into autoflowers, we're looking to fine tune and let's say we're already impressed that there's we don't have to use nutrients, and we know that we don't want to give too many nutrients because that will confuse the plant.
Right.
What would you suggest would be a couple amendments that we might want to use to find that happy medium where, we don't have to add a lot, but what might be the targeted few that will supercharge our plants?
Sure. And the way I'd approach this the second year is to experiment in two ways. One is to experiment fertilizing during the vegetative state, And I would use the vegetative, the typical vegetative fertilizers we talk about, which those are the ones that are high nitrogen, etc. And then I would also experiment. I would then let them go into flower and not fertilize them. And then I would take some that I would fertilize only in the flower stage. And then the third set, of course, I'd fertilize both. To see, I think that might make some big difference. I kind of like the idea of letting the plant grow. If it flowers in the 2 to 3 weeks that it normally should flower, you've got a plant that's getting into the flower stage, and then fooling around with the ferts during the flowering stage may produce the best result.
So I'm going to go a little bit deeper on that. So certainly we all have got more experimentation to do with this with these autoflowers. So,
and we got to share it, which is why that autoflower network is so.
Yeah, autoflower.net. Don't miss it.
Wow.
And so where do you think it's going to end up, though, in your experience with the soil food web and your experience with checking out autoflowers? Outside of this testing, for people who I'm very patient focused, right? So for a patient who's using autoflowers because they've got low mobility, low resources, and low space, let's just cut them to the ending and say, this is what we think the research is going to show. Just use these few additives. What would you tell them to use?
Soybean and molasses.
Really?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. And mycorrhizal fungi, of course.
Sure.
Because I always like that stuff. But yeah, I like soybean and molasses. They're if you can find GMO soybean, that's kind of tough to do. But unsulfured molasses, of course, not too much of it. That's a bacterial food, and the soybean's a fungal food. And the mix of them, the two together, the microbes love it.
So when you say soybeans, do you mean like okara, or do you mean what exactly?
Soybean meal.
Soybean meal.
Yeah, again, I always tell people, originally fertilizer was manure. And then I think people figured out, I don't have to use just the manure. It's kind of hard to carry around. Why don't I use the stuff that makes the manure? And so they bought the food that goes into it. So if you go to a feed store, you can find unsulfured molasses because it's a food, and you can find soybean meal, also a food, and it makes great microbe food. Great for the lawns, great for cannabis.
I've never used soybean meal, so I'm excited to look into it.
It's unbelievable. You can't burn. It's only used when it's eaten. It's great stuff. It's unbelievable. I use it on my lawn.
Right on.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.